This information may be interpreted as science fiction or however the viewer decides. It is shared for entertainment purposes, although we take it with utmost importance. Class 6. Are we alone in the universe? A shocking truth.
Hi! Welcome aboard. Thanks for coming. Today's video class will be here in the control deck room above Earth, since we will be discussing a burning question: are we alone in the universe? As you might have already guessed, and since this is, after all, Space Academy, what I will share on the subject will not be something conventionally believed down there on Earth, but you will also understand why that is later on. Originally, I was going to make just one video for now, but I realized there are so many important points I must mention, so I divided it into two parts, and the next one will come shortly after this one. Before we jump in, I want you to understand one thing, something mentioned before in video 2. And that is that a person cannot typically understand a concept which goes way beyond the framework of their mind and current understanding. They lack a necessary context. If I just come and say, for example, that the lion-looking ET dressed in armor likes symphonic music, you'll obviously think I am crazy or joking, as that's something that doesn't fit in your understanding of the world. You will experience what we call cognitive dissonance, which is a rejection of the idea or an interpretation of it based on what you currently have in your mental belief frame, which is, in this case, there are no ETs and lions don't wear armor. In order for that concept to have a slight chance of being at least considered, your mind needs a minimal frame of reference, minimum openness and understanding. Only then more advanced ideas can be given. And that's what I'm trying to do in Space Academy. Give you necessary context little by little, a base framework so that your mind can then be ready for more. This process of learning must unfortunately apply in the case of re-educating people on Earth in general, as they have been under heavy manipulations for centuries, and they don't have a frame of reference to understand certain space facts, because they have been programmed to reject them. That is the case of the topic of life outside Earth. Any mention of extraterrestrial people is met with disbelief and above-mentioned cognitive dissonance, although it's not exactly people's fault, since that's the official conditioning they have been subjected to since birth. Having said all this, let's begin, but do keep checking yourself for the cognitive dissonance as we go. It might creep in. When it does, just observe the rest of the video. No need to believe all what I share here, but keep the mind open to connect the dots as we go. From the officially accepted narrative's perspective, the only proven extraterrestrial objects are planets, stars, nebula, comets, asteroid, rock, forms of energy, and a little more. More complex extraterrestrial life is only viewed as a possibility, but unproven. Organizations such as SETI or NASA, supposedly searching for intelligent life out there, give us the illusion of open-mindedness. But since they haven't discovered anything yet, trying so hard, there can't be anything out there then. or at least it hasn't been found. Let's cut right to the chase. Remember class 2, where we talked about false realities and then about matrix perception agreements imposed by the controllers? Remember I told you I would reveal them slowly? Well, at this very moment, you are staring at the biggest one of them all. And that is Earth managers keeping the lid on the extraterrestrial life outside the planet. Hiding it, manipulating people's perception about it, and blatantly lying about the subject. People's general assumption that the human population at large is given all the truth and all what there is to be known is one of the biggest problems facing mankind nowadays. Are you one of those with that assumption? I hope not, as that is one of the most powerful ways to control the human population. And control they do exert, especially in the field of life outside Earth. They simply do not, I repeat, do not want us to know this. And the reasons why will be discussed in future videos, as they are complex. What they do want you to think is that the human being is indigenous to Earth, a marvelous blue ball rolling through space, where life evolved organically as a result of some kind of amazing Darwinian evolution, or, on the other hand, as an act of the divine hand, creationism. They have placed these two main schools of belief to satisfy both spectrums of humans. But notice they both point to Earth as the only place life has ever existed. For the more awakening individuals, they have prepared Sumerian tablets, for example, where human beings are described as the product of genetic engineering executed, yet again, on planet Earth. Why so much insistence on Earth and humans belonging to it? Whose interest does it serve to have us all think that the humans are indigenous to only one planet in the whole universe? Why keep us isolated in a limited Earth matrix if the truth is we are not alone? The reality is Earth humans have been kept in the artificially created illusion of isolation from life in space for thousands of years. And out of all the subjects Earth managers control, this is the one they keep the lid on the most. The idea that it is not known whether or not there is life outside of Earth is merely a concept controlled by the ones in power, and it belongs only to people on Earth, but only the people, because governments and the members of the elites know the truth very well. The subject all governments on Earth have been trying to hide for hundreds, if not thousands of years, is the presence of extraterrestrials. They do that by simple denial, but especially doing their best to erase the possibility of ET existence from the minds of the general population, skillfully inserting associations into the human mind which connect everything ET with entertainment, science fiction, and even cartoons. Not to mention with craziness and conspiracy theories, shaping the general perception of what is real and what is not, molding the collective beliefs into what we call terrestrial matrix. You had to notice it yourself, no? Try to mention extraterrestrials to the random person out there and see the reaction. You will be lucky if you get a serious one. Perhaps you are even cringing yourself. Remember what we discussed in the previous videos, and that is that the collective reality on Earth is created by the set of perception agreements, matrix agreements, and whether or not the set of agreements that make up the terrestrial matrix expands or not depends on groups called the Earth Controllers, who do not allow the expansion of consciousness necessary to understand concepts that are outside of what they want. Because this whole subject is huge, I must cut through to the most important points for this video. What am I really saying? Are we or are we not alone in the universe? Yes or no? We are not. How do I know? Years of research and inner knowing. But I also know because of something else, and I will tell you what that is in the second part. It's not that life is something that occurs in other parts outside Earth. Life is not the exception. It is the norm in the universe. Oh my gosh, crazy, no? No. To think that it is only means you have been programmed to believe so. It's more than okay. Just keep watching and see how you feel a bit later, while I here keep sharing what I know. The universe is full of life, and not only as rocks, planets, stars, but it is full of intelligent life in all shapes and forms. The officials say it is not? Put that aside for now. Do you really want them to keep having you locked onto Earth as the only life-holding place in the entire universe? How could they ever manipulate us into believing such an illogical and limiting nonsense? Space is not only filled with stars and planets, but also with thousands and thousands of intelligent species, all with different degrees of advancement, looks, and customs. Races of all kind, humanoid and not humanoid, many of them directly and indirectly involved with Earth since millennia, coming and going across the passage of time. Just look at all the traces of extraterrestrial presence, always finding another justification, of course, by the officials, such as great ancient megalithic structures, artifacts, and texts. Ancient mythologies all over the world, all pointing to the so-called gods, mingling with humans, endowing them with knowledge of all kind. What happened there, by the way, was the ancients turning the stellar people into gods, as the perfect example of cognitive dissonance kicking in. In other words, the ancients didn't have the right context, so they came up with scenarios around ET people that, with limited understanding, tried to explain the facts that otherwise were inexplicable to them. We don't want that to happen again, by the way. What about practices such as attempts to elongate skulls of the babies in some Earth cultures to resemble more their gods? Have you stopped to think that it could be because some of those gods are actually a race of people who visited Earth who happen to have their skulls and necks longer than us? Some of those skulls have been found on Earth in many places. From more modern times, thousands of real cases of UFO craft sightings and eyewitness stories, many of which of mundane origin, but others indicating something else, something unexplained.
Not to mention all kinds of whistleblowers revealing more and more openly that governments do indeed hide the extraterrestrial presence from the public.
I'm not going to go into all this to show you how many clues we have on Earth to indicate we are not alone and never have been. This is something you can do on your own, and it's not hard to find data. Investigate if you want to learn more. There is so much information out there on this topic. What I want to focus on here is something much more important. Something that isn't even mentioned much by the enthusiasts of life outside Earth. And it is the most relevant point to discuss. And that is that among infinite forms of extraterrestrials out there, one of the most common one is actually the humanoid one. The ETs that look exactly like you and me. People. And this is where I must stop. And we will continue in the next part. I know, I'm stopping at the most interesting point, but I'm not doing this as a strategy to have you come back, but because when I was designing this class, I realized that the topic of extraterrestrial people is very long with many important points, and it must stand on its own. So be a little patient. It will come very soon. It will also give you some space to breathe and see how you feel about this whole topic of life in space. Maybe do some researching? For now, let's see what our community friends have to say about how they felt when they first found out we were not alone. Maybe it's similar to what you feel? Since this video has two parts, I also divided their videos, so we will see more of them in the next...
Attention! Everyone on level 2, call to the bridge immediately. I repeat, everyone on level 2, call to the bridge immediately.
I'm sorry, I've been called, so I must pause for the moment, but don't go anywhere, this shouldn't take long. Okay, I'm back, and I'm so sorry for keeping you waiting. It's how it is around here. Always something happening. What happened actually was a small docking problem. We have another ship coming in, docking in at this very moment, and it's a very delicate maneuver for heavy and large starships to come together. You need to bring them in very slowly and carefully, because if not, they might crash, as their large mass tends to attract them together, just like two magnets. But anyway, it seems the problem has been solved. Of course, I'm kidding. I'm not really on the ship, as you know, but these are the real types of situations that do happen on spaceships all the time. I will be sharing more of them in the future. But okay, community videos. Yes, let's go.
Community Workshop.
Let's begin with Jack from USA and Zarek from Canada, who both had experiences when they were young.
My experience begins in 1964, when I was 14 years old. Saw a flying saucer over the skies of Pasadena, California. I got so excited, I was yelling at my parents, "Come out and look, look, look." And the craft just jumped into space.
The first time I realized we weren't alone in the universe was when I was very young. It was a very exciting feeling. Actually, I was up at a trailer park with my family, and my dad and I were sitting out, looking out the window, and then we noticed a craft hovering in the sky. And I just remember being a young boy and just lighting up at the thought, running out, jumping up and down, just to see the craft. And just the sheer curiosity of it all, just wanting to know more, kind of hoping they would land too. And I know my dad kind of felt that same kind of curiosity too. And that was, for me, that was a wake-up call, I think. I just knew from that point on, we weren't alone, and there were other people from throughout the galaxy, the universe, coming here.
Okay, so in this case, they were both very excited when they saw something they understood to be a spaceship. Not everyone would though. I think there could be all kinds of reactions. I must say, I have never seen one, not from up close, but I would be super excited too. Now let's go with Robert from Spain, a long-term friend of this community.
Well, the truth is that I never asked myself this question, because obviously I already knew, from a very young age, that we are not alone. I remember perfectly when I was a child watching the stars at night, and always thinking about that, of returning home. It's super curious. I don't know if others felt it too. So no, what did I feel? It's like now being in another country, which I know that in the end, when I leave here, I will go back home. Nothing else. So no, I never thought about that, because the life in the universe is the constant, not the exception.
Thanks, Robert. Yes, many people react exactly the same when they find out they are not alone. No reaction. And that's because there was never a moment in which they found out. It was just something they always knew and felt. It's normal to them. And this is what our next friend says as well. Let's welcome MDF from Peru.
Actually, for me it was like a confirmation. It's not something that I consciously knew, but I felt internally that it should be so, that we couldn't be the only ones living in this universe. While it is true that as a child I never questioned whether there was life on other planets, it was because something inside me knew that it was the norm.
It seems the heavy Earth matrix programming doesn't have such an effect on people who just know. They just know because they remember, even if unconsciously. Okay, and now a very interesting contribution from Shariva from USA.
When I first learned that we're not alone in the universe, it was really intriguing. Somehow I had managed to go my entire adult life without being exposed to the whole litany of extraterrestrial and alien life out there. And it was new information to me, and it was fascinating, and I wanted to learn as much as I could because something in this information felt right. And I was very excited, and I was thrilled, and I felt like with every bit of information I learned, the world was making more sense to me. With that is a little bit of fear, because the idea of not being alone led me to ask the question, okay, so who's out there? And the images that I had been exposed to in the media, a lot of them were scary. I didn't like watching horror movies or, sci-fi where there's a lot of violence. So I had to really look inside myself at my own emotional reaction to things and kind of identify what is the programming that I have been kind of influenced by. I think now, having been kind of chewing and researching and discussing this information, this material for the last couple years, I think now I feel powerful because a lot of questions I had about life and how the world works have been answered to a certain degree. But I'll be honest with you, it can also be very lonely, because the more you learn, the more you integrate, the more you start to see the world from a different perspective. You realize that the people around you who are ignorant and oblivious to this information cannot relate to you. And If you bring up too much of this stuff, they're going to think you're either crazy or you've joined a cult. And I don't really like that sort of, I don't want people to see me that way. So a lot of this information I keep to myself, or I share with a small handful of other inquisitive researchers. But it can be a lonely road. So it's exciting, it's thrilling, it's empowering, and it's lonely.
Wow, a lot of very good points. It's definitely empowering to be learning all this about what's really going on. It's definitely also lonely sometimes, that's true, and definitely an emotional roller coaster as you start to dive deeper. But it's worth it, I would say. I would never want to go back to not knowing. That's lame. Okay, 2 more. I really like watching these videos. I hope you do too. We have Scott from USA. Let's see what he shares.
I've always known they were real. I've always loved sci-fi and loved looking at the stars and studying stuff about space. Those kind of things led me to know there had to be something out there, but when I really knew was when I saw my first UFO. And that changed my life, because then I knew they were real because I saw one, you know. Studying astronomy and everything, I learned what meteors look like, what satellites look like, and planes at high altitude. So since then I've seen 9 UFOs, and none of them were any of those regular astronomical things. So yes, we are not alone, and that's a good thing. The way I feel about it now is super happy. Super happy to know that we're not the only ones there or here. But it's inspiring to me, and creates wonder and makes me want to go explore and meet all these other star families out in the cosmos.
I love that word, inspiring. It's inspiring. It's inspiring, and it creates wonder. Yes, it definitely does. Although I must admit that not everything is plain wondrous out there. It can get a bit more complicated than that. If you have patience to stick around, I hope you do, you will find out what it is as we move on. Okay, the last one for today. And this is Tomek from Poland, which, by the way, is the same country I am from. Here it goes.
When I was much younger, I was interested in astronomy. I would look through a telescope, draw constellations. I was interested in astrophysics, physics, astronomy, and everything related to rockets. However, over time, I noticed that this approach was quite empty. This classical scientific approach is quite empty because we treat all of space as a wasteland that is random. So we have all these stars in the sky. There are so many of them. When we're on the beach and we see the sand, all these grains of sand, then as many as there are these grains, there are so many suns in our galaxy. And these galaxies are also infinitely many, infinitely many. When I realized this, it was such a wow. That is, every sun and every planet everywhere is a kind of consciousness different from human consciousness, and it is a type of life. And every planet has a purpose, every place has a purpose to serve life, and in fact the universe also serves life. It is alive. It is something animated. Everything is in motion, from the smallest particles, from the smallest atom, which also has its point of singularity and its point of attention. When you then look at the sky, you will find that there is so much of everything there, and there is so much variety. And when we live in the infinite, virtually anything is possible. As we dig deeper and deeper, we find that it's all a much bigger mystery and a much bigger uniqueness than we think we live in. So it's worth looking with new paradigms at what it's around us, because the world is boiling with the life. It's the universe.
Wow, wonderful. Consciousness, life, infinity, unlimited potential of what life can manifest. Exactly. How limiting to think that a creation would only limit itself to one planet in the whole world. Thanks, Tomek, and thanks everyone for participating. There will be more of these in the next part. Okay, so let's stop here for now, and we will continue in the next part, where I will talk about an essential part of the subject. Extraterrestrial people. I know you probably have a million questions about the subject, providing you are open to it. What do they want? Why are they here? Are they friendly? Can they help us? Why don't they land? How does it affect me to know this? Etc., etc. Don't worry, I have been where you are, so I understand all your questions and will do my best to respond them all in many future video classes. Just be patient. This is an enormous subject, and be open. You don't even have to accept at face value all I'm sharing. As I said before, analyze and question things yourself to connect the dots. I'm here just to help you see those dots. Okay, connect some of them too, but mainly see them, in case you, as a soul, forgot. Can't wait to see you here again. And remember, we meet at this exact place again, here. See you soon.
Do not ask if there is life among all those stars filling the night sky, because those stars exist, because there is life in them.
Summary. If you hear a concept that goes beyond your current level of understanding, you fall into cognitive dissonance, rejecting it or interpreting it in your own way. The most controlled subject on Earth is the presence of extraterrestrials. The terrestrial matrix makes human population believe they are indigenous to Earth and that there is no one else out there. Earth humans have been kept in the artificially created illusion of isolation from life in space for thousands of years. The deep levels of governments and the elites know this, but they are hiding the truth from the public. They do this by denying it or making people associate ETs with science fiction, entertainment, craziness, or conspiracy theories. The universe is full of intelligent life, and you have never been alone.